My name is Alice Jordan, and I'm 31 years old. The call came on a Tuesday morning while I was in the middle of a work meeting. My phone buzzed 3 times in a row. Mom, then Dad's doctor, then Mom again. I stepped outside into the hallway, pressed the phone to my ear, and heard my mother's voice crack before she even finished the first sentence. My father's kidneys were failing. Both of them. The doctors had been monitoring his condition for 2 years, managing it with medication and diet, but now there was no more managing. He needed a transplant, and he needed one soon. I drove to the hospital that same afternoon. My father looked smaller somehow. The man who had taught me to ride a bike, who had stayed up all night when I had fevers as a child, who had danced at my college graduation, he looked like he had quietly shrunk inside his own skin. His eyes were tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. I sat beside his bed, held his hand, and made a decision before the doctor even walked in to explain the options. I told them I wanted to be tested as a living donor. My sister, Rachel, was there that day too. She nodded when I said it, squeezed my shoulder, said, "That's so brave, Alice." Then she went back to scrolling through her phone. I didn't think much of it at the time. We had always been different. Rachel was louder, more social, the kind of person who knew everyone at a party within 10 minutes. I was quieter. I just did things. The compatibility tests took 3 weeks. When the results came back, I was a match. The surgeon sat across from me and walked through everything: the risks, the recovery, the permanent reality of living with one kidney. I listened to every word, I signed every form, I called my boss and arranged 8 weeks of medical leave. I went home, sat on my kitchen floor, and cried for about 20 minutes. Then I made myself dinner and started prepping for surgery. The operation was 6 hours long. I woke up in recovery with tubes in places I hadn't expected, and a pain across my left side that felt like someone had reached inside me and rearranged everything. The nurses were kind. My mother sat by my bed and cried. My father, 2 rooms down the hall, was already showing signs of improvement by the following morning. His body accepted the kidney. Recovery was brutal in the most ordinary way. Not dramatic, just slow and exhausting and invisible. 9 weeks of not being able to lift anything heavier than a grocery bag. 9 weeks of sleeping on my back because every other position pulled at something that wasn't ready to be pulled. 9 weeks of watching my savings drain because 8 weeks of leave wasn't quite enough, but I had no more days to take. I went back to work before I was completely ready because I had bills. I smiled at people who asked how I was doing and said, "Much better, thank you." Rachel, during those 9 weeks, organized a fundraiser. It was genuinely impressive. She set up an online campaign, reached out to family friends, coordinated a small community dinner, and raised enough money to help cover some of my father's post-surgery medical costs. She was good at that kind of thing. She had always been the one who sent the group texts, planned the family trips, made sure everyone showed up. I was grateful for it, truly. It took pressure off my parents. I told her so. I didn't realize until the family dinner 6 weeks later that somewhere in those 9 weeks, quietly, without anyone saying it out loud, the story of what had saved my father had been rewritten, and I hadn't even noticed it happening. The dinner was held at my parents' house on a Saturday evening in late October. My mother had cooked for 2 days straight, the kind of meal she only made for birthdays and holidays. 22 relatives filled every chair in the dining room and spilled into the living room. The house smelled like roasted lamb and fresh bread, and the particular warmth of a family gathering that feels, from the outside, like everything is exactly right. I arrived a little late. My left side still ached in cold weather, a reminder that would apparently stay with me permanently, according to my doctor. I found a seat near the middle of the table between 2 cousins I hadn't seen in over a year. My father was at the head of the table, looking healthier than he had in years, color back in his face, posture straight, laughing at something my uncle had said. Seeing him like that made every hard week worth it. I felt it genuinely, deeply, without any bitterness at all. Then my mother stood up and tapped her glass. The room went quiet the way rooms do when a mother is about to speak at a family gathering. Immediate, respectful silence. She looked beautiful that night. She had dressed up. She was smiling the kind of smile that comes from real relief, from months of fear finally releasing its grip. I smiled back at her from across the table. She raised her glass and said, "I want to make a toast to your sister Rachel, who organized the fundraiser and saved your father's life." 22 people clinked glasses. I sat completely still. No one looked at me, not one person. Rachel laughed and waved her hand like she was deflecting the praise, but she was glowing. People leaned over to hug her. Someone said, "We're so proud of you." My mother was crying, happy tears, grateful tears. My father was nodding slowly, smiling at Rachel from the head of the table. I looked down at my plate. I had given that man the kidney currently filtering his blood. I had been cut open on an operating table. I had spent 9 weeks rebuilding myself quietly while watching my savings disappear. And in this room, in front of every person in my family, I was invisible. I stood up. I didn't plan to. My chair scraped back and I was just standing. I wasn't sure what I was going to say. I wasn't even sure I was going to say anything. But my father moved before I could make that decision. His hand came across the corner of the table and wrapped around my wrist. Not stopping me, holding me. There was a difference. His eyes were wet. He looked up at me with an expression I had never seen on his face before, something between guilt and love, and a grief that had nothing to do with illness. He reached into the pocket of his shirt with his other hand and slid a folded napkin across the table toward me. I picked it up, unfolded it slowly. His handwriting, shaky but careful, read, "We received a report from the hospital today. Your kidney is functioning at 94%. The doctor said it is the strongest result he has seen in 11 years of transplant surgery. You did not just save my life, Alice. You gave me a better one. I am sorry I let tonight happen the way it did. You deserved the toast. You deserved every glass in this room." The table had gone quiet again. My mother had seen the napkin. Her hand was over her mouth. I folded it back up and put it in my pocket. I looked at my father for a long moment, then sat back down. I picked up my fork. I finished my dinner. Rachel never said anything. The conversation around the tables slowly started again. But something had shifted. I could feel it in the way people were looking at me now, quietly, with a recognition they hadn't brought through the door with them. I didn't need the toast anymore. I had the napkin, and somehow that was enough. Not because the hurt disappeared, but because my father had seen me, truly seen me, and in the end, he was the only one who had ever really needed to. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button right now, because every week we bring you real, raw, deeply human stories just like this one. You don't want to miss what's coming next.